All right, we're live.
All right, what's going on, guys? It is Tim Bursons here, back with Trent McCloskey for Train Eat Live with an Amplified Metabolism
What's up?
podcast that we're rolling. So today we want to talk about a really important topic, minerals, specifically the four main metabolism minerals, which are sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. So we're pretty excited about this one. There's some tie-ins here to protein intake, to carbohydrate,
Hmm.
to carbon dioxide, to thyroid. We've talked before about how all these systems combine and how they're all interrelated and everything. And so the minerals are kind of at the heart of them. Because if
Hmm.
you think about minerals, they're basically charged ions. If you
Hmm.
have like sodium chloride is sodium, Na plus, chloride is Cl minus. So
Hmm.
the ion of sodium is positively charged, and it creates a current of electricity. So all the minerals are important for the electrical functioning of your
Hmm.
body, just as a quick primer. But before we get into all that, what's up, Trent? How you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
Doing good, yeah.
Good, good.
Excited to talk.
We were actually jamming right before we hit record for about almost like 30, 40 minutes, just talking about like the direction of the podcast, all that good stuff. So yeah, I feel like I'm already in like a good conversational flow. So I'm excited to
Yeah,
dive into everything. And
for sure.
yeah, just to piggyback on what you were saying, especially what with the minerals, tying this into like accomplishing, like say like your fitness goals and actually like feeling your best and functioning your best, especially in the mornings. One of the tie-in, I actually wrote like an article recently on like why diet soda is keeping you fat, and also tie in like coffee in the morning, especially on an empty stomach, and really just how your body is managing its minerals. And if you keep flushing them out, it's going to trigger a lot of like fat gain and trouble moving forward and accomplishing your fitness goals and feeling great. Kind of like that. I wanted to also touch on like that diuretic effect. Most people, especially in the fitness space, think they're actually like that's a good thing of flushing that water that they think is like around their midsection. But what that really is probably like the water flushing from your bloodstream. And that's really dumping all your electrolytes and minerals, which is then hurting your body to actually manage that water and minerals, for the long term. So I'm
Hmm.
excited to dive into that a little bit as well, because most people think like that's a good thing, but it's not. It's actually hurting your body to actually, keep it healthy.
Yeah, one of the things I have been wondering recently, it's actually interesting you brought up the diuretics, is about coffee intake, especially during the morning, especially like before you've eaten and stuff like that,
Hmm.
because of its diuretic effect. So we
Hmm.
do know that like caffeine will increase the cellular energy production from your cells.
Hmm.
Question is it coming from the healthy respiratory metabolism, or is it coming from the stressful glycolytic metabolism?
Hmm.
You can usually tell based on, if your hands and feet get cold, if you feel like you slip into that like the sweatier state, like the palpitations, the nervous jittery.
Yeah.
That's usually a sign that it's you're slipping into the stress state. And a
Hmm.
big part of that is that when you slip into the stress state, your body will selectively hold on to sodium at the expense of potassium, calcium, and magnesium. And
Hmm.
so that can lead to a big loss of minerals that you don't want to lose those minerals, obviously.
Hmm. I think it's something where like your body or your bloodstream could hold like 9 pounds of water just in its bloodstream. So it's like whenever you're slipping into that stress state, that's what it's releasing. It's not
Hmm.
releasing like what most people want of like the water in like their midsection or like in their cells, but it's actually coming from the bloodstream. And
The
again,
blood volume, yeah.
yeah, exactly. That blood volume, it's like they're losing all their minerals. And in turn, it's like it's kind of related to, oh, that was the first episode, the perfect morning routine. And that's something I
Yeah.
still been ever since that episode, paying attention to that every single morning. It's like whenever I actually have a big enough meal, say just for calorie reference, like over like 400 around 500, 600 calories, everything's normal. My hands and feet are warm. I feel the focus. My energy is good. And my bowel movements are still like normal. I'm not like running to the bathroom to pee or anything like that. It's like I feel just great. As opposed if I've slipped into that stress state with, say, caffeine causing that, then I feel like, okay, I'm peeing a lot. I feel jittery, anxious. It's like, okay, something is up there. And then it usually takes me a good bit of time to actually recover from that. Even after eating
Mhm.
food at lunch, it kind of like lasts throughout the whole afternoon. And then it kind of like drops me off. I'm like, oh, damn, that was a whole day of like things as opposed to like just feeling great throughout the entire day.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how it has like that momentum that catches on. Like once you
Mm-hmm.
get into the stress state, it's much harder to get back into the feeling
Yes.
good, healthy state.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Exactly. It's really big. It's really big.
Um, one of the things I've been really focusing on recently is potassium. I think I might have mentioned that in another episode. But drinking
Yes.
coconut water,
Mm-hmm.
having potatoes, sweet potatoes, yogurt, like all those things have a lot of potassium in them. And I think that we we've talked before about how sodium is a pro-metabolic mineral and how it like helps to decrease the corticosteroids and all those stress hormones. And I think you don't want to reduce sodium. A lot of people talk about how it's popular in the mainstream to talk about how sodium's
right.
Quote unquote bad for you. It raises blood pressure. Sodium only raises blood pressure in the short term. In the long term, it's actually highly associated with a lower blood pressure. And more importantly, it's inversely associated with all-cause mortality, meaning that people who typically have more sodium usually are living longer than people who have less sodium. And again, a lot of it has to do with the fact that your sodium is one of the most important extracellular minerals that helps to keep your blood volume intact, to keep that water in your bloodstream and keep it from losing. But when you're in the stress state, your body will hold on to it at the expense of potassium, calcium, magnesium, like I just said. So I was playing with for a while, like actually doing, keeping sodium high, obviously, but then also having more potassium. And I was noticing some pretty good effects from that because, you don't want to just hold on to sodium. You obviously want all of them. So having that combination, I think, has a really good effect on like keeping your blood volume there, keeping the intracellular volume, the volume in your cells full, and then therefore be able to keep the metabolism going and all the electrical signaling in the proper place and all that good stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I wanted to just add another thing with the sodium too. It's like, I believe like if you're injured like really bad, like the paramedics come for somebody, they like literally inject you with saline solution, correct? Which has like so high sodium to actually get your body like back into a normal state, or like the best it can be to actually save your life.
Yeah, to raise the blood volume back up. Yeah, so you don't lose the blood volume. And after you give blood, they always give you salty, carby snacks like to keep that blood volume.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a point to that. And lastly, I want to touch on, I think definitely like the processed white table salt, that's something you shouldn't be consuming. I think you should always do for the majority of your diet, like actually salt with like a natural sea salt, pink Himalayan, whatever it may be, because that's going to give you the most richest that actually still has those trace minerals. Whereas like I bet like the table salt probably doesn't have that many because it's processed so much. Yeah. And also it has like a ton of like preservatives, like I don't know like the exact ones, but this nasty chemicals, I forget the names of them. But
I think some of them are like chlorine washed or something. And so there's things you don't want it in the table salts. The sodium itself is the same. So, you're still going to get the sodium from table salt. I just think that it's better if you use like a pink Himalayan salt or like a gray salt or something that is a little bit more natural, basically. Yeah. You're usually going to be in a better place.
Definitely. But I want to hear this again, because I remember you made a very, very old video about muscle cramping. And I wanted to hear from you again of like talking about the balance of the cells, of like the minerals on the inside and outside of the cell. And I think we touched on this on another episode, but then we were waiting to dive into it a little bit further. Is that correct? Yeah, because that's big. Because I used to get crazy muscle cramps in the gym. Like oh my God, it sucks so bad. Like I would hate it. And it wasn't even like after like that intense of a workout. It was almost like a normal thing. And then before I know it, I was like in the shower and I was like washing my back and my whole lat locks up and I'm like screaming and it's bad.
Yeah. And so most people will say, have potassium or have magnesium. Like those are good for muscle cramping. Some people will like sit in a warm Epsom bath and that'll help with muscle cramps and stuff like that. And
that's only like one side of it though.
What do you mean by that?
Just like the magnesium and potassium, it's like you also need the sodium and the calcium.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think I was lower on that end.
Yeah, for sure. But again, even if sodium's high, if your body's holding on to sodium but losing potassium and magnesium, then you're still going to be low in those. And even if you just supplement with more sodium to try to keep your sodium levels higher, you still might have those hormones raised that are depleting the other minerals. But the main reason muscle cramping happens, we've talked before about like the intracellular minerals and the extracellular minerals. So the intracellulars are obviously the ones that are inside of the cell. And in a proper state, that is potassium and magnesium. That's when those are inside, you can think of it as like your cell is in the charged state, like when you charge your phone and it's at 100%. So when it's high in the potassium and the magnesium binds to ATP being the energy substrate that your cell uses. So potassium, magnesium inside the cell, sodium and calcium outside the cell. That's the charged state. You're in that state, you're producing lots of ATP, you're producing lots of carbon dioxide from the respiratory metabolism. and that carbon dioxide is constantly flowing out calcium and sodium out of the cell, keeping that flow moving out so that the potassium and magnesium stay inside of the cell. So when we think about like a normal cell, an organ cell, like the circle type of cell, we think of, those on the inside, these on the outside. The stress state happens when you flip into a lower production of carbon dioxide by using a cheaper, less efficient, quicker energy production, which is often the glycolytic metabolism, with its byproduct is lactic acid, and doesn't take out the sodium calcium from the cell. So those start to leak into the cell and displace the potassium and magnesium, which move outside of the cell. And so again, we're thinking about the organ cell, we're thinking of a circle, but a muscle cell is long, it's a fiber. And whenever you contract your muscle, we talked about this, I think in the last episode.
The lifting
what's
one.
happening is the actin and myosin they're being held apart naturally. And when you contract your muscle, the electrical signal comes in and removes the block so that they contract. So you're not actually using energy to contract. You're actually using the energy to reset after you've contracted. And so that's why you get rigor mortis when you die, is because you don't have the energy anymore. So all your muscle cells contract and stay contracted. Now, when they're in that contracted state, it's because calcium is bound to trypsin, I believe it is. So the calcium is now inside of the cell. You can think of it the same way as the organ cells. And so when you recharge the cell, recharge it back to 100%, what you're doing is producing enough ATP that can therefore remove the calcium and pull the bands back apart. And so the muscle cramping is happening for that same reason, that the muscle cell is in a stress state where the calcium and sodium have leaked into the cell and the potassium and magnesium are outside of the cell. So as long as you're producing enough CO2, as long as you have good blood flow to deliver the nutrients, and as long as you have enough of the sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium, then the muscle cramping won't happen. What typically happens is that, we said potassium, magnesium will help with muscle cramping. If they're low, then you don't have enough potassium and magnesium to be inside of the cell. And therefore you are creating that situation where the ions are switched and you're getting that cramp.
Yeah, exactly. Which they are not fun at all.
No.
And that's the thing too. I think a lot of things that contributed to that was just the poor food quality that I was eating and just poor lifestyle factors that my metabolic rate was not that high. So it was like any stress, it made it harder for my muscles to handle that, speaking in like the lifting sense of it.
Yeah.
And everything. Yeah. And a lot of that was what we just mentioned, like earlier on the episode of like, actually, I was doing a lot of intermittent fasting in the morning, and I was probably just dumping out tons of electrolytes and putting my body in that stress state. And then every time that I remember I was getting those crazy muscle cramps was at the end of that day in the afternoon, I was going to work out, and I was probably not in the best state to actually handle even more stress from the training.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not the only cause of muscle cramps. I mean, it's the basic cause, but even if you have a muscle that is just always tight, or becomes kind of like the soft tissue calcification, it starts to become calcified from not stretching it enough, or not giving it the massage to release it, or like overuse and all those things. You can get cramps from that, and a lot of that has to do with poor blood flow.
Yes,
so even if your blood minerals are good, it doesn't matter if the blood's not getting to the actual muscle fiber. And that's where things like foam rolling, stretching, yoga, and stuff like that. I think you said something about dry brushing does that too, or is that just?
It's called a gouchois or a goucha or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like almost like a scraping of with a little like jade stone, and you scrape it, especially on your traps, where that happens a lot. Whenever I get it done, I actually just did it to myself, I think last week, and it finally healed up. And all of a sudden you would see all these blood vessels, like not kind of like breaking, but that just means you're resetting that blood flow back into the tissue. And because it was restricted, just probably from calcium deposits and things of that nature. And my whole traps looked like someone was like beating me or something like that. But that's another technique that I love, because and then I feel so much looser and so much less tense, like in my neck and stuff. Yeah, it's a really awesome technique.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think all in all, you want to increase. So it's almost, I've kind of used this framework of thinking as far as, in the long term, we're looking to recover our bodies. We're looking to recharge a depleted battery. Well, in the short term, you're, when you work out, you're also depleting your battery and then trying to recover as quickly as you can from the workout, which is basically from recharging the battery. So there's some patterns there that we might be able to look at that have some similarities. And one of the main ones is that whenever you have a big long stress that depletes a lot of your nutrients, the quickest way to recover them is through having sugar and through having salt. And also potassium too, but salt is a little more important because, like you said, with the blood volume and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like lowering adrenaline and cortisol and stuff like that too.
And so things like Gatorade, Gatorade has a bunch of other shit in it too, so it's not. I'm not saying that's the best choice, but it does have the electrolytes, it does have the sugar. Like those, or the gels, that like runners drink, eat, or whatever, to help keep fueling their run. Like there's a reason that those things work to recover your body after an intense exercise. And when you're dealing with a long-term stress, it's sort of similar in the sense where you want to recover by having a little more sugar, a little more salt, a little more potassium, but you want to do so over the long term in a way that's like slowly recharging your battery up to whole, since it's been so depleted for so long.
Yeah, exactly. I was also going to add something I like taking is from a supplement company called Onnit, and they literally have an electrolyte mix, and it has it's a huge tub of literally just sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and I think phosphorus, and I think that's it. It's just like boom, just straight electrolytes. And I love that. Yeah, I just mix it with water. It doesn't have any. Yeah, because I think Gatorade has like a gum in it. I think it has guar gum, and then like some,
it has a bunch of stuff in it. Yeah.
Yeah, which is like, I would definitely say like Gatorade can be useful if it's like something like you just pick up at the gas station or something you need it like quickly, for sure. But like something you're drinking every day, I think I actually noticed like my stomach was being weird because I was drinking like a ton of it. So this probably just affected me a little bit weird. But
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm sure there's tons of other electrolyte powders you can have, and that's something I now sip on during my workouts. I might just make like a big 16 ounce protein shaker of it and sip that during my workouts as a little side comment.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the connection of thinking of cells and minerals or electrolytes as a battery is really important here, because that's, the cells are the base frame, or the minerals are the base framework of how your body sends electricity between the cells. If you really want to think about it that way. The way a battery works is that there's a positively charged and a negatively charged metal that are connected with the tube, and the electrons are able to flow through the tube, and that flow of electrons is electricity. So an electron by itself doesn't have any it doesn't have the electromotive force that it does when it's flowing. And so that flow is what we're looking for. It's always about that movement. Energy is always about movement. And so when we're looking to restore our bodies and get them into a higher energy state, we're looking to increase the flow.
I love that. That's a great freaking way to explain it. 100%.
Yeah. So increasing metabolism, that's why all of what we talk about is increasing metabolism, is because when the energy flow through the cells are higher, they're in a higher charge state, they have more energy to do more work, to repair, heal, function optimally, and all that good stuff.
100%. So I think two ways to look at this for like someone listening is like to separate into like replenish and also like reducing the stress response. Would you agree? Like those are the two areas to like keep your mineral balance. And
I think specifically when we're talking about minerals, I think replenish and reduce loss. So you're talking about diuretics, things like especially diet soda, because diet soda, it has
the caffeine in it, in the diet.
It has the caffeine, but it also has like the fake sweeteners, which have their own problem with gut health and endotoxin. Good topic for another video.
For sure.
But it also has a lot of volume and doesn't have any sugars to help you hold on to the minerals and help you burn energy through the proper pathways. And it's the same sometimes with black coffee, especially on an empty stomach. And so I really think that looking at all the different diuretics you have and looking at the amount of caffeine that you're eating or consuming, and making sure that you're not overdoing the diuretics. If you are running to the bathroom, peeing every 2 minutes, if you're waking up in the middle of the night and you have to pee often, then there's something that's not quite right, and it has to do with your minerals, because you're definitely reducing the amount of minerals in your body by excreting all that water so quickly, and you're also putting yourself into a dehydrated state. In that state, you can drink a bunch of water to try to stay hydrated, and it's going to flush right through you. You're not hydrating your cells because you need the minerals to hydrate.
Yes, exactly. And then that comes from like the misuse of too many diuretics, and you can't manage that water appropriately. It's like, as a side comment, it's like if you're like one of the Diet Coke lovers out there, I know our buddy Carter loves his Diet Cokes, but in the same sense, it's like you're literally almost tricking, if you're craving that, you're tricking your body into thinking it's actually getting calories because it's craving those. It's like, that's why we always recommend, like, you'll be so much better if you get like a nice fresh squeezed orange juice or something like that, as opposed to a diet soda. And if you're actually nourishing your body and giving your body those calories and nutrients and electrolytes, you'll stop craving the diet soda like literally like almost immediately, because your body literally just like, it gets triggered, it gets hooked on that because it's actually thinking it's getting what it needs to regulate itself, but it's not. It's like people are like, oh, I need like 2, 3, 5. I don't know if anyone drinks 5. I'm sure, but
it
yeah.
just goes up. Yeah, it goes up and up and up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really that's part of the danger with things like the if it fits your macros type of thing, and the calories in, calories out. It kind of gives you an excuse to not really worry about what kind of calories you're consuming. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Kind of go into that.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. That's like, you and I both followed a similar thing and got like horrible results. You know what I mean? We started to look gooder on the outside, but then we're always asking, like, what's the point of like looking good if you're feeling like shit on the inside? You can't sleep, you have no energy, you're crashing every afternoon. Like that.
I think the bigger part is that you actually don't really look better. Like, maybe you get a little leaner, but you don't really sustain it.
Right.
And then you look like shit. Your skin's terrible. You have bags under your eyes. Like, none of that shit's good.
Yeah, the complexion's a little bit off. And that's where it's like, instead of like, you're kind of just dull and muted, as opposed to like this complexion that's like radiating. Yeah, that's definitely the difference. And like, I think that all circles back around. If you're looking like that and feeling like that, you just keep hopping on that positive feedback loop. Whereas, I was going to say, all right, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like,
you wrap up.
Oh, I was going to say, that's why we're like big proponents of not necessarily like calories in versus calories out, but actually what's the quality of the food you're putting into your body, and is it keeping you in line with that, like raising your metabolic rate and healthy eating, as opposed to just like, oh, calories in versus calories out, trying to keep everything so low in diet because you don't want to gain a little bit of body fat, but in turn that's hurting you worse and worse because your health is slowly declining and your body's like just trying to survive, and you're going to get to the point where your body just fights back, especially on your end. And we were talking about in previous podcasts, it's like you just hit that point where boom, you just ate a whole bag of M&Ms, or what did you eat? Like that whole like
pretzel M&Ms,
the jumbo bag.
Funny how that memory sticks with you. Like it's like you can see it so clearly. Which is actually, as a real quick side note, when your body's under cortisol and like a really high stress response, your brain actually will shorten the synaptic vessels, or the synaptic space between the two synapses, so that the signal can be sent quicker, because it's a learned stress response that it's saying, oh, there's a stress, next time it comes here, let's trigger this and fire this automatically. And so like memories in high stress situations, if anyone's ever been in like a car accident, or they got a call from like someone who got hurt, or like a loved one who got hurt, like those memories are cemented, and the reason they're cemented is because of that really high stress response comes in and like forms that memory very strongly.
For sure. That just almost opened up a whole nother podcast, with emotion tied to memories and actually moving on from maybe something traumatic or something like that. Because that's big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which I think is like, if you really want to think about it like this, here's a tie-in here, is that whenever you have that big stress response, you're creating this memory that's easily activated through a neuronal pathway that's cemented very strongly, so you remember it. And now when you live your life and that memory keeps popping up, you're triggering the synaptic network that's happening. But at the same time, while that's being triggered, the stress response is being triggered again. So the whole idea behind PTSD, and literally PTSD has health effects, is that you're constantly triggering this stress from that memory. And so the stress is constantly keeping you stressed out.
Which is crazy, which is so crazy.
It is very crazy. And, I think sometimes though people misunderstand when we say stress, that we don't necessarily mean that only that kind of stress. A lot of stress is much more subtle, almost to the point that like you just think that's the way life is. And you don't really realize you're under stress until you are able to raise out of it, step above it, step outside of yourself. And from that new place, you look back and you're like, oh, I was feeling guilt. I was feeling fear. I was feeling anger. Like, I just thought that was who I was. But then you see it from that outer perspective, and all of a sudden you realize that habitual thing that you thought was you it was in fact a negative emotion that's been leaking cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream your entire life, and you had no idea because it was just natural for you.
Exactly. And even on like the nutritional end, like, oh, you think it's normal to feel bloated after a meal. You think it's normal to feel like kind of tired and lethargic after a meal, or like go for the Pepto-Bismol or like the antacids or whatever those are called, antacids or whatever those are. It's like, no, like that's normal. And once you can actually raise yourself up out of that, it's like becomes a whole new world, a whole new perspective. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So the another point that I wanted to make about specifically about potassium is insulin, and I'm really excited to do a full episode on insulin sensitivity.
Yeah, that'll be a good one,
into,
especially with sugar.
Exactly. Yeah, and it kind of ties into what we were just talking about with calories in, calories out, drinking lots of soda, and like losing your minerals, and then like trying to lose weight but actually looking worse. And a lot of people will say that insulin is one of the main drivers of fat. And so I think when you understand this mechanism, it kind of makes more sense. When you are, potassium is highly related to insulin sensitivity. And when you have good potassium stores, usually your cells will respond to glucose far more quickly than they will if you are potassium depleted. And so a big part of this is when your cells are in that stressed out state, they're using fats for fuel and they're not absorbing carbohydrates, because free fatty acids and carbohydrates will compete for entry into the cell. So under the stress state, there's a higher proportion of fat and a lower proportion of carbs, because the cell's trying to save the carbohydrates for the organs that can only use carbohydrate, specifically the brain and the heart. And so I think that's really important to acknowledge that when your potassium is good, your insulin sensitivity is good. Therefore, you can eat carbs and burn them properly and not have that fat gain from the high insulin. But it all depends on your mineral status, and it depends on the way that you're producing the energy.
Well, which is so big, because it's just so easy, especially nowadays in the fitness space. Like, oh, carbs are bad, sugar is bad. It's like, no. It's like your stressed out body is the issue. You know what I mean? You have to take a step back and actually replenish your minerals and get that functioning. And then it will allow you to actually fix your, sugar metabolism and actually be able to process that stuff way more efficiently. Yeah, that's huge. That's so big.
And so I'm really starting to come to this place where I'm starting to think that, the main, so to preface this, sodium and potassium are both a single charge. They're just a positive ion. And calcium and magnesium are two. They have a double charge cation. And so they're kind of in a little bit of separate categories, in the sense that like sodium and potassium are in balance at this level, calcium and magnesium are in balance at that level. Sodium being the single charge that's outside the cell, calcium being the double charge that's outside the cell, potassium being the single charge that's inside the cell, magnesium being the double charge that is inside the cell. So as that basis, what I've really started to think is important, as far as specifically sodium and potassium go, is striking a really good balance between them, having the electrolytes very high and the liquid far lower. Because in that stressed out state, when you're losing the fluids and you're losing the minerals,
it's harder for your body to like regulate that water.
Exactly. And that's a big reason.
Higher electrolytes. Yeah.
That's a big reason why you get cold hands and cold feet, is because your blood volume drops. And so when your blood volume drops, you don't have enough pressure pushing through your bloodstream to reach all the extremities. And then meanwhile, the blood vessels are constricting here to save the blood and keep it into the main organs.
Yes.
If you have plenty of blood volume, then of course all the blood's going to get everywhere, no problem. If your blood volume drops, then you want to maintain pressure here. So you restrict all the extremities and pull all the blood into the really important organs that are important for survival. And so that requires sodium specifically for the extracellular, but you also want to make sure you're having potassium so that the inside of the cells are good too. So you don't want the inside of the cells to shrink too much and then, not function properly. You want there to be a proper balance.
A little plus on that. I forget what episode it was, but the elixir of life, we mentioned that. I've been adding a little bit of honey. I've been adding a little bit of honey to that too. So it would be sea salt, a little bit of honey, and also the lemon, and then water. Which again, is probably that honey is providing the potassium there, a little bit of glucose there as well, which is going to help, regulate those electrolytes from the sodium much more efficiently. And
and the minerals are absorbed way better.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to take that to the next level, and then treat myself to that Manuka honey that from like New Zealand. That's going to be amazing. It's
That
good.
stuff's good.
It's good. Expensive, but if I only have it just treat to myself like a little bit in the morning, I think that's worth it. I think
For
that's worth
sure.
it. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just tried this today actually because I was kind of interested in it.
Hmm.
Is I used it kind of like your elixir of life, except I did it with coconut water and
Nice.
then a little bit of agave syrup. So
That's awesome.
I
That's
put a lot of
awesome.
salt with because coconut water is so high in potassium.
Hmm.
So you're getting high salt, high potassium. There's
Hmm.
also some calcium, magnesium in coconut water and and some other nutrients too. And then the agave is a super high fructose source, but
Hmm.
in general also just a source of good carbohydrates.
Hmm.
And I feel pretty good after doing it. So it's something I'm going to keep experimenting with
Yeah.
for sure.
Did you do
Yeah.
that first thing in the morning? I'm going to try that
No, I
out.
literally just did it before this podcast. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Nice. Getting the conversation juices flowing
Yeah,
nicely.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hmm.
That's awesome, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to touch on with minerals? I think a good part of that, I think we finally like touched on. It's not just about like trying to. It's also reducing the loss and also replacing. I think that's a good focus where people got to start of like, okay, well, what's all this stress causing the loss? What's your diet looking like as well? If you can hammer those both, you're going to start really seeing some improvements.
Definitely.
Hmm.
We touched a little more on potassium and sodium than we did on calcium and magnesium. I think
Hmm.
that maybe we need to save that for another episode. I definitely want to touch
Definitely.
on the calcium paradox.
Yes,
It's
of
really
thinking that
interesting.
like you actually have higher calcium in your blood, but it's really not that high. Or what were you?
Yeah, the calcium
Yeah.
paradox, as a quick primer, the calcium paradox is basically that your body will pull calcium out of your bones
Hmm.
and then store it in your soft tissue. And
Hmm.
so it's like, usually if your calcium is high, your body's like, oh, we have plenty of calcium, put it in the bones, keep the bones strong. But for
Hmm.
some reason, your body's pulling it out of the bones where it should be and then
Hmm.
storing it in the soft tissue where you don't want it to be.
Hmm.
And so like, especially when you're looking at blood markers, there can be some wacky things going on when it comes to calcium, and you want to reverse that process, pull the calcium out of the soft tissue and put it back into the bones.
Hmm.
But like I said, that's a
That'll be
conversation for
yeah,
another
that'll
day.
be good. That'll be a good episode for sure.
In addition to that, I really did like doing magnesium salt baths in
Hmm.
hot water, and
Yeah.
I even for one time I tried it with putting like some sugar and some salt along with Epsom salt and dissolving that in the water as well. You got to make sure you rinse the tub out so it doesn't get sticky afterwards. But the sugar, they have sugar scrubs and stuff for your skin. It actually does help your skin because your
Yeah.
cells can use that sugar.
That's interesting. Oh, I might actually try that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So yeah, magnesium is good for sleep. It's a muscle relaxant, and like I said, potassium and magnesium are typically good for
Hmm.
preventing muscle cramps. Um,
Definitely.
but the real key takeaway here is that you want to tell your body, hey, we have plenty of sodium, so you don't need to dump potassium, magnesium, and calcium at the expense of sodium.
Hmm.
You want to provide plenty of potassium and
Hmm.
also calcium, magnesium, so
Hmm.
that your cells can function properly in the way they're supposed to. And
Hmm.
you want to consume a proper amount of liquid. And what a proper amount of liquid is really hard to say, because someone
Hmm.
in a hypothyroid state can drink 1 glass of water on an empty stomach and immediately have problems: cold hands, cold feet, peeing all the
Hmm.
time, stress state, boom, right away.
Right.
Someone in a high metabolism state can have 3 glasses of water and have no problem at all because they're stable, and that
Hmm.
water is being held on to and used properly with minerals and with the proper
Hmm.
oxidative metabolism, and so there's no problem. So your environment matters. If it's cold, you're going to need less water. If it's hot, you're going to need more water. I know some people have messaged me saying that they wake up in the morning and if they have a glass of water, immediately their hands and feet go cold.
Hmm.
So it's one of those things that I would really listen to your thirst, and also, drink water, but make sure you're balancing it with the minerals. That's why I like
Hmm.
coconut water so much, because it's hydrating, but it has the minerals as well.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can be sure that you're not
Hmm.
diluting your internal stores.
Yeah, especially to add on that, even like the Elixir Life or something similar in the morning. I actually want to try that, what you just said in your little Elixir Life mix in the morning too. And also being careful of like the diuretics, like having diet soda or say coffee on an empty stomach, because again, you're ruining your body's ability to manage its water, manage its electrolytes, keeping this
Hmm.
problem going. And that's what you
Yeah.
have to really look at. I think that's a big one for people to take away, to stop that first, and then replenishing them is going to be so much more easier, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah. And that also means that you stop drinking coffee when you get to that jittery place.
Hmm.
Honestly, I really think that 1 to 2 cups of coffee a day is probably good. I really, you know, I knew someone who did like 20 cups. Like, I'm not kidding you, like something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, she was having these problems. She was having the low metabolism problems. And I think a big part of that is that your body will crave caffeine almost as a replacement for thyroid, but you're really not helping the situation if you're not in a good state to use that caffeine properly.
Right. 100%. That's why I'm always looking at coffee, honestly, nowadays, after I have some sort of meal, even if it's super light, but just something, and I'm always feeling so much better.
Yeah, exactly. And then just overall, not overdoing the caffeine. Green tea is a good option for, you know, if you want less caffeine, but you still like sipping on something warm.
Yeah. 100%.
Plenty of good antioxidants in green tea too. And there's some other good benefits from it. So
I was about to say yerba mate, but that still has a pretty high caffeine content, but not as much as coffee, but it's more than green tea. So, but yeah, I like that tea a lot though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I think that's probably everything. So if you guys like this video, you know, give us a thumbs up as always, share it with anyone who needs to hear it. Make sure you hit subscribe so you can keep up with all of the updates, and leave any comments if you have questions or topic ideas or anything like that. Check out the description in the about page or in the about section for this video. I have a Patreon account that you can sign up for and help support us, help give us a little love. And we appreciate, you know, all of your guys' support, whether or not you donate or not. It's really nice to just know that you guys are getting something good out of this information, and that, you know, you're enjoying the good conversation. We're enjoying it. So
yes, we are. Yeah. All right. That was another good one, man. I'll see you in the next one.
All right. Sounds good.
Awesome. See ya. Peace, guys.